Therapists of Reddit, what was your "you must be kidding me" moment? A client was going to probate court and thought he'd dress up by putting a non-slip sock on his collar as a tie. Trying to be supportive, I told him, "Nice tie," to which he replied, "It's not a tie, it's a sock, stupid." I used to work with children that have autism and Down syndrome, which means a lot of play therapy. I had my moment when one of my clients wanted to sit on my lap while we practiced reciting animal cards followed with their corresponding noise. Forgot what animal noise I made that made him laugh so much that he ended up peeing on me from the laughter. That night was also date night. Just today I conducted a threat assessment on a first grader who told his teacher he wanted to stab himself with a knife and die. Upon further questioning, he revealed that he and dad watch The Walking Dead together, and last time on the show he saw two people stab themselves to death because they didn't want to get eaten by the zombies. Why are you even watching that show with a 6-year-old? Intake clinician here. What brings you in today? I'm here for porn addiction. At this point, not the weirdest thing I've heard. Let's go with that. Okay, tell me about it. I watch it 3 times a week. For 15 minutes or so at a time. My girlfriend said I'm an addict and forced me to come in. I see lots of very extreme cases. But this was so minor that it made me stop for a moment. I sent them to couples counseling. I was working surveillance one night at a psych ward, keeping a close watch on a mentally ill patient. Right before my shift started, I was briefed that the patient had started eating one of the light bulbs and attacked a nurse. At around 5 AM he woke up and saw me eating there at the end of his bed. I said good morning and he didn't reply. About 15 minutes of silence went by before he stood up and stared out the window and said a person is most vulnerable while taking a hit. I didn't sit back down for the rest of my shift. One that sticks out in my mind was a mother that brought in her 5-year-old for therapy because she was into Disney princesses, which are clearly sexual, and since a 5-year-old is non-sexual, this must clearly mean she's being sexually abused by a close family member. I've also worked with countless couples who have come to counseling for adultery, wherein adultery equals porn. One client even became suicidal because she caught her husband jerking off after not having sex with him for months. I know everyone has different values, but come on, y'all. Obligatory, not a therapist, but my hyper-conservative parents sent me to an addiction therapist because they found out I smoked pot occasionally in high school. The therapist they chose was a former White House drug czar, renowned authority on sugar addiction and hard drug abuse, and an expert on rehabilitating extreme problem cases. My parents must have spent a fortune and pulled strings to get me an appointment. The first session he asks me what drugs I use. I told him I smoke pot like once a week and that was it. After a few rounds of "come on, you can trust me, and we can't begin treatment until you admit your problem," he realizes that I really do only smoke pot once in a while and literally says, "You have got to be kidding me. Tell your parents you are a normal teenager and you don't need to come back." I had a group of 5 insane people come in to discuss who should clean the dishes. Doctor I used to work with told me about a woman who tried to commit suicide, so they put her in a safe room. She then proceeded to try and overdose on water, which he told me is possible but really damn hard to do. This recently happened to me. I have a client who is a daily methadone doser. During our last session he complained of sleep issues. Delving into this new issue, he described his solution to me. He saves his spit in a jar to drink at night when he is unable to sleep. Saves his spit in a jar to drink later. Not a therapist yet, but I'm currently taking a counseling and therapies university course, and we occasionally hear some stories from our professors in lectures or tutorials. One sticks out in my mind because I'd never seen an entire class shocked into silent horror before. A guest lecturer told us about a client he had who used a craft knife to cut open his own scrotum and took out what was inside because he wanted to look at it and play with it. My client told me his family didn't appreciate his interest in guns, to which he proceeded to tell me he is always carrying. He then places his gun on the table in front of me and asked if it made me nervous. It did, but we focused more about why he wanted to know if I was nervous, and it brought it back around to his family. From then on, I made sure to always have access to a door and never put the client between the door and myself again, just to be safe. Social work. Not therapy but close enough. Me. We need to think of some new ways for you to discipline your daughters other than spanking. Client. But my parents did it to me and I turned out okay. Me. Stares at this high school dropout drug addict who has spent his entire adult life in and out of jail halfway houses. Can't get a job and had his 3 kids removed for abuse and neglect. Okay. I actually did successfully turn this around in a gentle way and make him realize he hadn't actually turned out okay. Physical therapist. Intern back Jen. Old lady with dementia. I was walking with her in the hallway where visitors are as well. She says her pants is falling off. She can't use her hands to pull it up. She has a rollator where she takes a lot of support. She is wearing a skirt. Check it and I say, nah, it is okay. She says it again. I say again that it is okay. 10 seconds later a diaper full of it drops to the floor, almost making her fall. Prevent that, but she dragged it a little bit and spreading it all over the floor. It smelled horrible. I work as a residential aide in a treatment facility with a clinical team, so closely tied to a therapist but not one. I generally think you've got to be kidding me when my co-workers leave all the paperwork for me to do on my shift and do crosswords on theirs. I'm looking at you, Jeff. You lazy bag. I'm late to this thread but forensic therapist here. I work with paralytic offenders. One time a guy I worked with urinated on my co-worker's car in broad daylight. She was in the car. He made eye contact with her while he was doing it. His PO picked him up from group 20 minutes later. He's current having a little vacation at a state facility. When I worked in bereavement, a client of mine used the term skid marks when discussing the accident. For some reason, there and then, the expression just caught me off guard. I joined the dots, and the corners of my mouth started to rise. In actuality this may have only lasted a moment, but it felt like minutes. All the while I was drawing blood as I chewed down on the insides of my cheeks. I felt like the worst human being alive. I'm a speech therapist, that counts, right? And I see this little kindergarten who also has massive behavior issues. We are working on language and pragmatics because he enjoys calling people stupid ducking itches and little dirty whores and goddamn disgraces. Most likely for attention. He will walk around the room calling me a stupid itch, a smelly cunt, and repeating the word duck until he runs out of breath just to see if he can get a reaction from me. I would work on articulation with him because he doesn't actually say those words correctly, but I figured best to work on that later after I've got the swearing and name calling down to a minimum. Teenager comes to session, tells me they broke into their neighbor's house just for fun by smashing a window. Said they browsed their CD collection and weren't impressed with all the Spanish music. Said they searched the house for money and when they got to the 2nd floor they heard a shower running. Someone was home. Teen ran out and went home and baked a lemon meringue pie and returned to neighbor's house to give it to them as a gift. No answer at the door. Discussed needing to have a doc assess teen about mental health hospitalization. After I make the call to the police. Teen asks to use washroom. Sure. Kid seems calm with what's happening. Then teen bolts out of the office. Police did find them later when they showed up at their parents' office to borrow $20. Psych ward for a month. Had a patient who swallowed things as a self-injuring behavior. This individual would swallow anything metal and pointy, usually as a way of getting into the hospital or to stay in the hospital. At one point they wanted to get surgeries or procedures to have the objects removed, but they weren't actually suicidal. One instance where they almost died after ingesting a series of closed safety pins that ended up opening inside their stomach stopped them from eating things that wouldn't pass. Anyway. So this person was upset that they were getting discharged as they wanted to stay until the beginning of the month. Hate to say it, but it's not uncommon to see people come in because they are out of benefits for the month. The usual complaints of being suicidal weren't working, because we know this person isn't actually suicidal. So they went and swallowed the iron from the Monopoly game. It didn't work. We still discharged them, but ever since we haven't been allowed to have board games on the unit without staff supervision. Was running an addiction treatment group. Some of the participants were referred by the court, usually for a DUI. The referral conditions were simple. If they finished treatment, they would not serve time in jail for the DUI. One of these court-referred DUI participants ran a limo service and showed up to group with a tablet and cell phone. He spread things out and proceeded to treat the space as his personal office. I intervened, explaining he would not be able to conduct business while participating in the group. He gave me a look that would have killed an ordinary person. Said it was a busy time of year and he really needed to stay in touch with his drivers. I told him I understood, but he still needed to put the stuff away and pay attention. Lots of eye rolling. I can't believe this lady. And he still kept checking his phone and getting up to go outside and take calls. During the break I told him his behavior was disruptive and he would have to leave. This seemed to make him happy, until I added I would be telling the judge he did not complete treatment. For the first time he seemed to slowly realize he was there for a reason, and might actually end up in jail because of his behavior. He apologized and asked to stay, and he settled down after that. Full stop. You drop this, serious. I had a middle schooler get arrested for truancy in the middle of an IQ test. He scored in the gifted range. I'm physically non-monogamous. I'm afraid my boyfriend is cheating on me with his female friends, both from the same person during the same conversation. Not a therapist, but I was a volunteer for a school for special kids, and this hyperactive kid of age 7 started raping an autistic girl who had no idea what is going on. Had a patient once with auditory hallucinations. They suddenly decided I was the voice and they had to do whatever I said. So I encouraged them to do positive things for others and always be nice to their mother. Had a client who was told he absolutely had to start losing weight else he would become troublingly diabetic and begin losing appendages. He didn't put much effort in, eventually having his foot amputated. Time after that I saw him. I had to explain that having a foot amputated did not count as half a stone towards his weight loss targets. He was genuinely mortified. Not a therapist, but this is definitely a WTF moment. I had to go to school consulting once. I was there because the fire alarm in the building has ring 3 times that night. Once was a drill, the second is around dinner time, and the last one is around 3. I snapped at the last one and threatened the kid who caused it with a baseball bat. You know, those stupid indoor fire alarms. Anyway, I was sent to 1 session of counseling because you know, antisocial behavior and all that. Anyway, there was this dude who also in for therapy. It was a group thing. The counselor asked him why he was here. He said he was here because he was caught by his roommate ducking a warmed up shepherd pie, which was not his, in the kitchen. All of us seriously just stopped and stared at him, like he wasn't saying this embarrassed or nothing. He just matter of fact said he ducked his roommate's shepherd pie. Not a therapist, but I met a guy on a chairlift who worked with a client who associated moving past 3 miles per hour with instant death. My mother and brother made me go with them to family counseling. They mostly discussed the issue that I didn't watch the news with them and I'd rather watch Home and Away or Neighbors. I was 13, and that I didn't know anything about politics. I flat out refused to go after 2 sessions of the 3 of them ganging up on me and telling me to be more involved with their interests. What 13-year-old girl likes discussing politics?